All right, so right now we're going to be working on our first value scale. So that's going to be our first one up top. And we're going to start with our yellow one. So we are going to start by grabbing our yellow paint. And we are going to add our yellow paint to our paint palette. So we are going to just add it there. And our first square is going to be for yellow. So we can just start filling that in. And for this one, you can just decide if you want to use tape or not. If you do not use tape, just try your best to stay within those lines the best you can. So just try your best, stay within those lines, fill in that square, and make sure that you get that in. All right. So once you have that filled in, you are going to wash your brush. And if you have paper towel, grab your paper towel. I'm going to grab some. We are going to dry our brush a little bit because we're going to start by mixing our purple. So make sure your brush is very clean. We are going to grab some of our red and some of our blue. So let's open both of those colors up and get a little bit of red in there. Clean our brush again. Once we know it's clean, dry it out a little bit. Grab some blue, and I'm just going to put it somewhere different on the palette just so I can control how much of it I'm going to mix in. And I'm just going to start mixing it in the red a little bit at a time. Once I see that my purple is the kind of purple I like and I want it to be, so that's probably pretty good. I am going to actually clean my brush again. And I want my brush to be clean for this because I will grab a tiny, tiny bit of that purple and some of that yellow, start mixing it in, and it's going to mix a little bit of a darker, more muted down yellow. And I can keep adding some yellow down to it because we just want to see a gradient. We want to create a value scale, so we don't need it to go very, very dark just yet. So this is going to be our second square color. So it's just like a tiny, 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 tiny bit of that purple added. So once we put it down, we're not going to see that much of a difference, but it's going to look slightly more muted, slightly darker yellow. So by using the purple, we are basically going to use the complementary color of that yellow to darken that color, mute it down. And as you can already see, that's already darker. So what we're doing next is grabbing tiny, 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 tiny. You can see it's like very, very little bit of that purple. Adding it in. And that is going to be our next one. Hopefully it's enough. Let's see. And we can always, if we don't see, I'm running out of yellow. So I'm just going to like add a little bit more purple. And that is going to be way too dark compared to what I just did. So more yellow. And that can be the color. Okay. Color matching. So we are going to always keep adding a little bit of purple at the time to just start darkening our color. And just always make sure you stay within those lines. Make sure you create an even layer. And as you can see, it's getting more darker, more muted. That is too much purple, but I'm adding a little bit more. And as you can see, it's getting darker. And we don't want it to go super, super dark just yet. But we want to see a little bit of a difference within those colors. So as you can see, it's getting darker. You can always even just go with more purple in and add it there. It's going to still desaturate it even more. But always make sure you create that even layer. Okay, so once you fill in that square, we're going to go in and do the last one with more of that purple. Now I don't have much of that yellow left, so let's figure this out. But as you can see, the color is becoming like a little bit more brownish. It's going to get more desaturated, which means like that the brightness of the color is not as bright as it was down here. It's going to get more dark, desaturated, dull. And that is how we're going to be darkening with our complementary colors. So the next thing we can do is we can create our next value scale. So as you can see, this one, it goes gradually up. So the next value scale we can create is the red one. So it's going to be a red value scale because we're going to start from our primary colors and we're always going to start to try to stay within the lines. We're going to rinse our brush like usual. We're going to grab some of the red. We're going to put it on our palette, kind of like what we did with the yellow. But so we are going to start with our primary color, which is the red. But what we're going to mix with it, it's its complementary color, which is going to be a nice green. So we're going to grab still that yellow, and since we already have the blue there, we are going to mix a green over here. So that's probably good enough. So once we have that green, we can probably get started on our value scale. So we're going to start with our first square. It's going to be our clean, pure red. Stay within the lines. Make sure you have an even layer of the color. So we're going to fill in that red. Stay in the lines. All right. So maybe I'll just make that green a little tiny bit darker. So I'll add a little tiny bit more blue. Alright, so once I have that, I'm gonna clean my brush super quickly again. I'm gonna have my red. I'm gonna grab a tiny bit of that green. I'm gonna mix that in there directly. Maybe grab a tiny bit more. Mix it in. Let's see. Maybe a little bit more. We need the green to be a little bit darker. Probably. Maybe not. I can kind of see it well on camera. That's pretty good. Okay. But the red is looking a little bit darker over here. So what I'm gonna do next is grab, ooh, light turned off. Let's see. I can turn it back on. Maybe. Okay. So what we're gonna do is add, let's just make that a little bit darker still. Darker green. Okay. So clean my brush a little, add a little bit more of that green in here. It's gonna be maybe too dark. Add a little bit more red. Okay. Might have gotten too dark still. A little bit more red. Okay. So we are going to put a red down here. And as you can see, this one's desaturating as well. So it's turning darker, more dull. It's not as bright as this one. I don't know if you can very much see it on the camera as well, but it is becoming more brownish. Even layers as usual. And I know that painting on this piece of paper is not the best, but we'll make do. And it's gonna be fine. So once we fill that in fully, we are going to add more, well, add more cream and make it darker. We keep running out of colors. Add more green, make it darker. Fill the square in. You know the drill. Maybe I need it. You can even use your smaller brush probably for this. It might be more helpful to stay within the lines. But try your best. And once you have that, and you can see still more towards the maroon color, more desaturated. Just gonna grab more red just because we're very much running out. We're gonna grab more of that green and go darker. That was a very light green. Go darker, go darker, go darker, go darker. Until we have our darkest color. So ideally, you will have enough red that you're just going to add a little bit of the green at a time, and you will be able to just keep going darker a little bit at a time. But this works as well. If you run out, you can always keep mixing it. Just make sure that in your value scale, you keep going darker. So as you can see, our value scale keeps going from light to a more desaturated, dull color. So this is kind of like how we're going to be darkening the colors using the complementary ones. Just as we said for the top value scale. And the complementary one, as we said, was going to be looking at the color wheel. If I can find my little color wheel somewhere here. I just saw one. Looking at the color wheel. The complementary color is going to be the opposite one. So for yellow, we use purple. For red, we use green. And right now we're going to go in because our last primary color is going to be our blue. And we're going to do blue with orange. So let's clean up our brush super quickly. And we're going to grab a lot more of the blue so we don't have to do this again. So let's just put it there. A couple of scoops of the blue. This one's kind of dirty. A couple of scoops of blue. We already have some yellow there. We're going to grab a little bit more yellow, just because why not? And then we're going to grab some red. So we're going to make let's grab more here. We're going to make our orange. So we're going to start mixing it maybe here. A little bit darker. Oh, that's too dark. That's fine. All right, so now that we have our orange, put that more yellow. Almost super. We have our orange. Yeah, that's a good one. All right, now that we have our orange, we are going to, as we just did, and look at that value scale, how it turned out. Because once it dries, the color turns a little bit darker so we can see it better. But just dried, we're going to grab our blue. Ooh, my paintbrush was still wet. We're going to fill in our first square with blue. And this one's going to turn interesting. So it's going to turn a different kind of blue as we paint it. But you will see. Because adding the orange is going to make it a more dull blue, which I love. More of a dark night sky blue. But you will see. And this paint is also kind of runny. But we can make it work. Okay, so once we have our first square filled in, we are going to, as we did before, grab a tiny bit of that orange. Mix it in. Oh, Maybe a little bit more because we have a lot of blue. Mix it in. Tiny bit more. We want to be able to kind of see a little bit of a color change. And I do see it now. And we're going to fill our second square in. We're going to add more orange. And fill the next square in. And as you can see, it's becoming a different kind of blue. Darker, more dull, not as bright. More of a night sky blue. And then a tiny bit more orange. We'll add it too much more blue. So we fill that square in. And you can see that it's becoming a lot darker.
We're going to make sure that the squares look as good as we can, fill them in nicely, make sure that they're square, that we try our best to stay in the lines, and then we're going to add a little bit more orange to our blue to do our last square. So once we think that our blue is looking a little bit darker, just make sure that you mix in enough orange. We are going to fill in that last square. So we are going to grab that blue, try our best to stay in the lines. I would use a little bit more red if you want to darken it a little bit more, just because my orange right there is a little bit pale, so I'm just going to try to make a little bit of a darker orange to mix in. So I'm just mixing it in well with my blue just to make sure that it is actually darker than my previous one, and I start filling in my square. So fill in your entire square, and then you will be basically done with our value scales. So as you can see, we go from a light, bright, saturated color to more dull, darker, less saturated, so desaturated colors.